My brother stopped laughing mid-sentence when my niece said, "Auntie, you missed the wedding." My parents just laughed at the situation. So that very same day, I canceled all the plane tickets I had promised them. I was going to spend over $50,000 organizing a family trip after a wedding I wasn't even invited to. That was the last time they saw me as the family's ATM. Ever had that moment when you realize you've been nothing but a walking ATM to the people who are supposed to love you most? Yeah, me too. It hits different when it's your own blood, though. I'm Kate, 32, a financial advisor from Chicago with a knack for making smart investments and, apparently, an even bigger talent for being completely blind to my family's true colors. Until 3 weeks ago, that is. Hey, can you guys save me some cake? I laughed into the phone as I rushed through the airport terminal. My flight had been delayed twice, and I was doing everything possible to make it to my brother Michael's house for my niece Lily's birthday party. I had promised her a special gift to see her favorite band next month, and I wasn't about to let her down. "Don't worry about it, Katie," Michael said. "We understand." Business stuff happens. I could hear the family gathering in the background, laughter, clinking glasses, the familiar chaos of our family events. It made the lonely terminal bench I was sitting on feel even colder. "I'll make it up to all of you," I promised, already mentally calculating how I could shuffle meetings around to spend more time with them next month. "And tell Lily her present is still coming." "Always the reliable one," Michael chuckled. "See you soon." When I finally arrived 3 hours late, the party was winding down. Michael's house, the one I'd helped with the down payment on, was still filled with family members, though most of the neighborhood kids had gone home. I spotted my parents chatting with my sister-in-law Jennifer in the kitchen, surrounded by half-empty wine glasses. The prodigal daughter returns. My father raised his glass in a mock toast. Business must be booming if they can't even let you off for a kid's birthday. I forced a smile, used to the little digs about my career. My father had never quite understood why I'd chosen finance over taking over his hardware store. But the irony wasn't lost on me. My disappointing career choices had bailed out that same hardware store twice in the past decade. "Where's the birthday girl?" I asked, setting down my bags and the carefully wrapped gift box. "Outside with the cousins," my mom said, giving me a quick hug. "She'll be thrilled you made it." I headed to the backyard where Lily was playing with her cousins. At 7 years old, she was all gangly limbs and missing teeth, with Michael's smile and Jennifer's eyes. When she spotted me, she came running. "Auntie Kate, you came!" "Of course I did, sweetheart. Happy birthday!" I knelt to hug her. "Sorry I'm late. The airplane had to take a nap." She giggled at my silly explanation, then suddenly looked serious. "That's okay. Daddy said you probably wouldn't come anyway because you're always working." The comment stung, but I kept my smile in place. "Well, I'm here now, and I have your present." Her face lit up, previous comments forgotten. "Is it the concert tickets?" "Please say yes." "Maybe," I teased, "but you have to open it to find out." We headed inside where I handed her the gift. She tore into the wrapping paper with abandon, and when she saw the Taylor Swift concert tickets, she screamed so loudly I thought the neighbors might call the police. "Mom! Dad! Look what Auntie Kate got me!" She waved the tickets around, jumping up and down. "Wow, Kate," Jennifer said, eyebrows raised. "Those must have cost a fortune. Nothing's too good for my favorite niece," I replied, though I didn't miss the calculating look in Jennifer's eyes. It was a look I'd grown accustomed to from my family, a mixture of expectation and entitlement that I'd spent years pretending not to notice. Later, as we sat around the living room eating leftover cake, the conversation turned to summer plans. My brother was mid-laugh, telling a story about a disastrous camping trip from the previous summer, when Lily suddenly piped up. "Auntie, you missed the wedding." The room went silent. Michael's laugh cut off abruptly as if someone had hit a mute button. My parents exchanged a quick glance before my mother let out an awkward chuckle. "Kids say the darndest things," she said, reaching for her wine glass. "What wedding?" I asked, looking from Lily to Michael to my parents. No one would meet my eyes. "Uncle Chris's wedding," Lily continued, oblivious to the tension. "It was so pretty. I got to throw flowers and everything. Chris was my cousin, more like a brother growing up. We'd spent every summer together at our grandparents' lake house, shared secrets, protected each other from bullies. There was no way he would have gotten married without inviting me. Unless he did." "Chris got married?" I asked, my voice unnaturally high. Michael cleared his throat. It was very small, very last minute. You were in London for that conference, remember? We knew you couldn't make it. It was 2 months ago, Lily helpfully added. We all went to the beach for it. Grandma and Grandpa were there too. I looked at my parents, who suddenly seemed fascinated by the pattern on the couch cushions. 2 months ago I was in Chicago, I said slowly. I wasn't in London. I haven't been to London in over a year. My mother laughed nervously. Well, you're always traveling somewhere for work, dear. It's hard to keep track. The pieces were starting to fall into place, and the picture they formed made my stomach drop. You all went to Chris's wedding? All of you? And no one told me? Kate, don't make this into something it's not, my father said, using the same tone he'd used when I was a teenager having what he called a dramatic episode. Chris knew you'd be busy. It wasn't a big deal. Not a big deal, I echoed. My cousin, who I grew up with, got married, and none of you thought to mention it to me, not even a text. You're always so busy, Jennifer said with a shrug. And you know how you get when you feel left out. We were just trying to spare your feelings. The condescension in her voice made my cheeks burn. Spare my feelings? By lying to me? By pretending the wedding never happened? We didn't lie, Michael protested. We just didn't bring it up. And when exactly were you planning to bring it up? I demanded. Next year? Never. My parents exchanged another look. Kate, honey, you're overreacting, my mother said. It was a lovely ceremony, but very small. Family only. The words hit me like a slap. Family only? I'm not family now? That's not what your mother meant, my father cut in. Of course you're family. You're just ... Not always available. The implication was clear. I wasn't reliable enough to be included. Except when they needed money, of course. Then I was the first person they called. A memory surfaced, Michael calling me 3 months ago asking if I could help with Lily's private school tuition. Just until the business picks up, he'd promised. I'd transferred the money that same day. 2 weeks before Chris's family-only wedding that I apparently wasn't family enough to attend. I stood up, suddenly needing air. I think I should go. Don't be ridiculous, Kate, my mother said. You just got here. Stay the night like we planned. Yeah, about that. ... Single quotes. Michael looked uncomfortable. We actually turned your usual room into a home office last month, but the couch pulls out. It's super comfortable. Another revelation. The guest room, my room, whenever I visited, was gone, and no one had bothered to tell me. Just like no one had bothered to tell me about Chris's wedding. I'll get a hotel, I said coldly. Don't be silly, my father said with a laugh. Why waste money on a hotel when you can stay here? The irony was almost too much. My money wasn't a waste when it was paying for Lily's school, or helping with Michael's mortgage, or bailing out my parents' store. But spending it on myself? That was silly. Speaking of money, Michael said, clearly trying to change the subject, did you book those flights for the family vacation yet? Lily's been talking about Disney World nonstop. And there it was. The real reason they'd been so insistent I stay for the party. 3 months ago, flush with the success of a major investment deal, I'd impulsively offered to take the whole family to Disney World. First-class flights, deluxe resort, VIP experiences, the works. A $50,000 gift that I'd been meticulously planning ever since. About that vacation, I said slowly, a cold clarity washing over me. I think we need to reconsider. Reconsider? My mother looked alarmed. But we've already requested the time off work. Lily's school knows she'll be absent those days, and I've been researching the best restaurants in the park, Jennifer added. I've made a whole itinerary. Of course she had. Jennifer, who hadn't worked since Lily was born, who complained about money constantly while getting weekly manicures and driving a car I'd helped finance, had found time to plan how to spend more of my money. I'll be canceling the reservations, I said, my voice steady despite the anger building inside me. All of them. What? Why? Michael looked genuinely confused. Is this because of the wedding thing? Kate, don't be petty. Petty? I laughed, but there was no humor in it. You exclude me from a family wedding, lie to my face about it, convert my room without telling me, and I'm being petty? We didn't think you'd care that much about the wedding, my father said dismissively. You're always working anyway, and we're meant to tell you about the room, my mother added. It just never seemed like the right time. I looked around at their faces, concerned not about hurting me, but about losing their luxury vacation. In that moment, it was as if I was seeing them clearly for the first time. These people didn't value me. They valued what I could give them. I've made my decision, I said, picking up my purse. The vacation is canceled. You can't do that, Jennifer protested. We've already told Lily. She'd be heartbroken. Then perhaps you should have thought about that before deciding I wasn't. Family enough to know about important events, I replied. Or before lying to my face repeatedly. Katie, be reasonable, Michael said, using the nickname he knew I hated. It was just a small wedding. It's not like we excluded you from something important. I stared at him, incredulous. Not important? It was our cousin's wedding, Michael. The cousin we grew up with. The cousin who was like a brother to us. Well, if you weren't always so busy with work, my father began. I make time for what matters, I cut him off. I rearranged meetings and flew across the country to be here for Lily's birthday. I would have done the same for Chris's wedding if anyone had bothered to tell me about it. Kate. You're making a scene, my mother hissed, glancing at Lily, who was watching with wide eyes. No, Mom. For once, I'm not going to smile and pretend everything's fine when it isn't. I'm not going to keep being the family. ATM while being treated like I don't matter. ATM? Is that what you think? Michael looked offended. Just because you help out sometimes? Sometimes? I laughed again, this time with real bitterness. I helped with your down payment. I pay Lily's school tuition. I've bailed out Dad's store twice. I funded Mom's kitchen renovation. I pay for every holiday gift, every birthday present, every family vacation. And what do I get in return? Lies and exclusion. The room fell silent. My parents looked shocked, as if they'd never considered how one-sided our relationship had become. Or perhaps they'd just never expected me to call them on it. We're family, my mother finally said, as if that explained everything. Family helps each other. Family also includes each other, I countered. Family doesn't lie or keep secrets. So you're punishing all of us because you got your feelings hurt? Jennifer asked. Real mature, Kate. I looked at her. At her designer clothes and professionally highlighted hair, all things she deserved, while simultaneously claiming they couldn't afford Lily's school fees without my help. I'm not punishing anyone, I said. I'm simply reevaluating my priorities just as you all clearly have. And right now, spending $50,000 on people who don't consider me part of the family isn't a priority. Kate, my brother began, but I cut him off. I'll be heading to my hotel now. Please don't call me about the vacation. Or anything else for that matter. As I turned to leave, Lily's small voice stopped me. Are you mad at us, Auntie Kate? I knelt down to her level, my heart breaking a little. None of this was her fault. No, sweetie, I'm not mad at you. I'm just sad about some grown-up stuff. I still love you very much. Will you still take me to the concert? She asked, clutching the tickets. Of course, I promised. That's a gift just for you. It won't change. I straightened up and faced my family one last time. Goodbye. I'll be in touch when I'm ready. The drive to the hotel was a blur of tears and anger. By the time I checked in, my phone was filled with messages. My parents demanding I stop being childish. Michael insisting I was overreacting. Jennifer suggesting I was having some kind of breakdown. Not one of them contained an apology. That night, lying in the impersonal comfort of a hotel bed, I made a decision. I opened my laptop and canceled every reservation for the Disney trip. The flights, the hotel, the VIP experiences, all of it. I sent a brief email to my family confirming that the vacation was indeed canceled, then turned off my phone. The next morning, I called my assistant and arranged for an extended leave of absence. Then I booked a single ticket to Bali, a place I'd always wanted to visit, but never had the time for. If I was going to spend $50,000, it would be on something that brought me joy, not on people who saw me as nothing more than a convenient source of funds. As my plane took off 3 days later, I felt a strange mixture of grief and liberation. I was mourning the family I thought I had, but for the first time in years, I was putting myself first. I had no idea what would happen when I returned, or if I would ever repair these broken relationships. But I did know one thing for certain. I would never again be anyone's ATM. The Balinese sun felt different than the American one, warmer, somehow more honest in its intensity. 2 weeks into my impromptu find myself trip, and I was beginning to understand why people spoke of this place as magical. I'd traded designer suits for loose cotton dresses, conference calls for sunrise yoga, and the constant checking of my investments for lazy afternoons reading books I'd been meaning to get to for years. My phone remained in airplane mode most days. The first week had brought a barrage of messages from my family, starting with anger, moving to manipulation, and finally settling into a pattern of guilt trips that was so predictable I could have written the texts myself. "Your father's blood pressure is through the roof because of your little tantrum," my mother wrote. "Lily cried herself to sleep last night talking about Disney," from Jennifer. "I don't know what kind of breakdown you're having, but this is affecting all of us," from Michael. Not one of them had acknowledged the real issue, that they had systematically excluded me from family events while happily accepting my financial support. Not one of them had apologized. By the second week, the messages had slowed to a trickle, and now, sitting on the balcony of my villa watching the sunset, I realized I hadn't heard from any of them in 3 days. The silence should have hurt, but instead it felt clarifying, like the final piece of evidence in a case I'd been building against my own denial. My phone buzzed, not with a family message but with a calendar alert. In 1 week, I was supposed to take Lily to the Taylor Swift concert. Unlike the family vacation, this was a promise I intended to keep. I hadn't lied when I told her my issues weren't with her. She was just a child, caught in the middle of adult dysfunction. I sighed, knowing my peaceful retreat was coming to an end. It was time to go home and face reality, including the fallout from my decision to cancel the family trip. Part of me dreaded it, but another part felt stronger than I had in years. 3 weeks away from my family's emotional manipulation had given me perspective I desperately needed. The night before my flight back to Chicago, I finally turned off airplane mode and allowed all the accumulated messages to come through. Most were what I expected: more guilt, more manipulation, more demands. But one message caught my attention. It was from my cousin Chris. "Hey Kate, heard there was some drama at Lily's party. Call me when you can." "Miss you?" I hesitated, then dialed his number. It was early morning in the States, but Chris had always been an early riser. "Kate?" His voice sounded surprised, but warm. "Didn't expect to hear from you so soon. How are you?" "I've been better," I admitted. "Congratulations on your wedding, by the way." "Sorry I couldn't make it." There was a long pause. "Kate, what are you talking about? Melissa and I aren't getting married until next spring. We just got engaged last month." The world seemed to tilt beneath me. "What?" But Lily said ... "Everyone said you had a beach wedding 2 months ago." "What?" "No. We had an engagement party at Virginia Beach 2 months ago." "It wasn't a wedding, an engagement party," I repeated, feeling sick. "That the whole family attended." "Yeah, it was great. Melissa's parents rented this amazing beach house and..." He stopped abruptly. "Wait, are you saying you didn't know about it?" "No one told me, Chris. Not a word." "That's impossible," he said, sounding genuinely confused. "I sent you an invitation. I even called Michael when we didn't hear back from you. He said you were in London for some big investment conference and couldn't make it." The lies were stacking up, each one more painful than the last. "I wasn't in London, Chris. I was in Chicago. Working, yes, but I would have come if I'd known." "Kate, I'm so sorry. I had no idea. I would never have excluded you." His voice was thick with regret. "You're like a sister to me. I even saved a spot for you in the wedding party for next spring." "It's not your fault," I said, though my voice shook slightly. "You didn't know they were lying. But why would they lie about something like that?" I laughed, the sound hollow even to my own ears. "That's what I'm trying to figure out. But I think it has something to do with money." "Money? What do you mean?" I hesitated, reluctant to air family dirty laundry. Even to Chris. But I was tired of keeping secrets that only protected people who had repeatedly hurt me. "They've been using me, Chris, for years. I pay for everything: vacations, school tuition, house down payments, business bailouts. And in return, they exclude me from family events and lie to my face about it." There was a long silence on the other end of the line. Finally, Chris spoke, his voice strained. "Kate, there's something you should know. That beach house for the engagement party? Your parents told Melissa's family that you paid for it as an engagement gift." The floor seemed to drop out from under me. "I what?" "They said you'd arranged it as a surprise for us. Melissa's parents were going to split the cost, but your mom insisted you wanted to cover it all. It was a really expensive rental, Kate." I closed my eyes, trying to control my breathing. "How much?" He named a figure that made my stomach lurch. Nearly $15,000 for a weekend beach house rental. Money I had never offered, never approved, never even known about. "Her parents sent you a thank you note," Chris continued. They were so touched by your generosity. When we never heard back from you, they were a little hurt. I never got any note, I said, my voice faint. I never knew about any of this. Kate, I'm so sorry. This is ... This is really messed up. Did they ... Did my parents actually pay for the rental? Yes, they handled everything. Said they were using your credit card on your behalf since you were too busy to deal with the details. My credit card. The joint card I'd given my mother years ago for emergencies. The card I rarely checked because it was tied to an account I'd set up specifically for family expenses. The card that I now realized had been used for far more than emergencies. I need to go, Chris, I said, already reaching for my laptop. I'll call you when I'm back in the States. Kate, wait, it's okay, I'm not mad at you. Just need to check something. After we hung up, I logged into my credit card account, the one tied to the emergency card I'd given my mother. What I saw made my blood run cold. Over the past year alone, there had been charges totaling nearly $70,000. Restaurant bills far too large for my parents' usual dining habits. Designer clothing stores, jewelry, first-class plane tickets to destinations I knew they had never mentioned visiting. And yes, a $15,000 charge to a vacation rental company dated exactly when Chris had mentioned the engagement party. My family hadn't just been using me as their ATM, they had been actively stealing from me. And they had been doing it for years, right under my nose, while simultaneously excluding me from the very events my money was funding. The betrayal was so deep, so complete that I couldn't even cry. Instead, a cold, calculating anger took hold, the same detachment I used when analyzing difficult investments or cutting losses on failing ventures. I spent the rest of the night making calls to my bank, to my credit card company, to my lawyer. By morning, I had canceled the emergency card, initiated a fraud investigation, and begun the process of untangling my finances from my family's grasping hands. I also booked an earlier flight home. If I was going to deal with this mess, I wanted to do it on my own terms, not according to my previous schedule. As the plane lifted off from Bali, I felt none of the peace I'd cultivated over the past weeks. Instead, I was filled with a cold determination. I had been a fool, but I was done being fooled. Miss Reynolds? There's someone here to see you. I looked up from my desk, where I'd been reviewing the fraud reports my bank had compiled. I'd been back in Chicago for 3 days, working remotely while I sorted through the financial disaster my family had created. I hadn't contacted any of them yet, still processing the extent of their betrayal and planning my next steps carefully. I'm not expecting anyone, I told my assistant. Who is it? Your brother, Michael. He seems ... upset. Of course he was upset. I'd frozen the accounts that had been paying his mortgage and his daughter's tuition. I'd canceled the credit cards they'd been using. I'd cut off the flow of money that had apparently become their lifeblood. Send him in, I said, squaring my shoulders. Michael burst into my office like a storm, his face flushed with anger. What the hell, Kate? What do you think you're doing? I regarded him calmly, noting the expensive watch on his wristwatch I was quite certain I had unknowingly paid for. Hello, Michael. Please, have a seat. I don't want to sit down. I want to know why the school called saying Lily's tuition payment bounced. Why our cards were declined at dinner last night. Why Mom is getting calls from the credit card company about fraud. Because it was fraud, I said simply. Using someone's credit card without their knowledge or consent is fraud, Michael. It's actually a crime. He faltered slightly, his righteous anger dimming. What are you talking about? Mom has had that card for years. You gave it to her? I gave her a card for emergencies, I corrected him. Not for $15,000 beach house rentals. Not for designer clothes. Not for first-class tickets to God knows where. Michael's face paled slightly. Kate, you're being ridiculous. Mom would never stop lying, Michael. I've seen the statements. I've talked to Chris. I know about the engagement party you all told me nothing about. The one you told him I was in London during. I know about the beach house rental you told his fiancé's family was a gift from me. He sank into the chair across from my desk, the wind gone from his sails. It wasn't like that. Then what was it like? I leaned forward. Please explain to me how spending $70,000 of my money without my knowledge while actively excluding me from family events isn't exactly what it looks like. We didn't ... Single quotes. He ran a hand through his hair. You're always so busy, Kate, so wrapped up in your work. And you have so much money you never even seem to care about. We thought you wouldn't mind helping out. Helping out? Helping out? I repeated incredulously. You call theft helping out? It wasn't theft. You're family. And you've always been generous. We just ... Took it a step further, without telling me, without asking me, while lying to my face. He had the grace to look ashamed, but it didn't last long. Look, maybe things got out of hand, but you've never cared about money before. Why start now? Why punish Lily by stopping her tuition payments? The manipulation was so transparent it was almost laughable. I'm not punishing Lily, Michael. I'm holding you and Jennifer accountable. You're her parents. Her education is your responsibility, not mine. We can't afford that school without your help. You know that. And yet somehow you can afford weekly golf outings, designer clothes, and luxury vacations. Interesting priorities. His face darkened. You've never had a family to support. You don't know what it's like. No, I just had all of you to support. Apparently, I sighed, suddenly tired of the conversation. What do you want, Michael? Why are you here? I want you to fix this. Turn the cards back on. Reinstate the tuition payments. Stop this ... dis tantrum. I studied my brother, this man I'd grown up with, who I'd loved and supported for decades. I searched for any sign of remorse, any acknowledgement of the pain he'd caused, any indication that he understood the magnitude of the betrayal. I saw none of it. Just entitlement and anger that his gravy train had been derailed. No, I said simply. No? What do you mean no? I mean no, Michael. I will not turn the cards back on. I will not reinstate automatic payments. I will not continue to fund a lifestyle for people who have lied to me, stolen from me, and excluded me from their lives, except when they wanted my money. You're being ridiculous, he sputtered, over one stupid engagement party you missed. Get over yourself, Kate. It wasn't just the engagement party, I said quietly. It was years of being treated like an outsider while simultaneously being used as a bank. It was discovering that my own family has been stealing from me. It was realizing that none of you, not one, sees anything wrong with what you've done. So that's it? You're cutting us off completely? Over money? No, Michael, not over money, over trust. Over respect. Over basic human decency. I stood up, signaling that the conversation was over. Now, if you'll excuse me, I have work to do. You'll regret this, he said, his voice low and threatening. When you're old and alone with nothing but your money to keep your company. You'll regret pushing away the only family you have. The words were designed to hurt, to make me doubt myself, to bring me back in line. A month ago they might have worked, but I wasn't the same person I'd been a month ago. Better alone than surrounded by thieves, I replied calmly. Goodbye, Michael. After he stormed out, I sat at my desk, hands shaking slightly. I'd expected the confrontation to be difficult, but nothing had prepared me for the complete lack of remorse. The continued manipulation, the refusal to acknowledge any wrongdoing. My phone buzzed with a text from my mother. How could you do this to us? After everything we've done for you? I almost laughed at the absurdity. After everything they'd done for me? Like what lying? Excluding? Stealing? Instead of responding, I blocked her number. Then I blocked my father's, Jennifer's, and Michael's. The only family contact I kept was Chris, who had been as much a victim of their deception as I had been. The rest of the week passed in a blur of work, legal consultations, and financial reorganization. I changed all my passwords, closed joint accounts, and set up new accounts at different banks. I hired a forensic accountant to track exactly how much money had been taken without my knowledge or consent. I consulted with my lawyer about potential legal action, not because I intended to sue my family, necessarily, but because I wanted to understand my options. Through it all, I felt a strange, detached calm. The initial shock and pain had given way to something else, a clear-eyed determination to protect myself and to rebuild my life on honest foundations. The night before Lily's concert, I received a text from an unknown number. It was Jennifer. Are you still taking Lily tomorrow? She's been looking forward to it for weeks. Don't punish her for adult problems. The message was classic Jennifer part guilt trip, part demand, with a thin veneer of concern for her daughter. But she wasn't wrong about one thing. Lily shouldn't be punished for her parents' actions. I responded simply, "Yes, I'll pick her up at 5 p.m. The next day, I arrived at Michael and Jennifer's house exactly on time. I debated having my driver pick up Lily instead, to avoid another confrontation. But I knew my niece would be confused by such an arrangement. Besides, I refused to be chased away from my relationship with her by her parents' behavior. Jennifer answered the door, her expression a carefully constructed mask of neutrality. "Lily's almost ready. Do you want to come in while you wait?" "I'll wait in the car, thanks." She sighed dramatically. "Kate, how long is this going to go on? The silent treatment, the financial cutoff, it's childish, is it?" I raised an eyebrow. "More childish than stealing from your sister-in-law while excluding her from family events?" "We never stole from you. We just used my credit card without my knowledge or permission," I finished for her. Which is the literal definition of credit card fraud. It wasn't like that, and you know it. Actually, Jennifer, that's exactly what it was like. And the fact that none of you can admit it tells me everything I need to know. I glanced at my watch. "Lily needs to be ready in 5 minutes or we'll miss the opening act." As if summoned by her name, Lily appeared behind her mother, her face alight with excitement. "Auntie Kate! I'm ready. Do you like my outfit?" She twirled, showing off the concert t-shirt and sequin skirt she'd paired with glittery sneakers. Despite everything, I smiled. "You look perfect, sweetheart. Ready for the best night ever?" "Yes." She bounced on her toes, then hugged her mother goodbye. "See you later, Mom." Jennifer held her daughter tightly for a moment, then whispered something in her ear. Lily nodded, then bounded down the steps toward my waiting car. The concert was everything a 7-year-old Taylor Swift fan could dream of: lights, music, dancing, and enough sugar to fuel a small army. For a few hours, I let myself forget about the family drama and simply enjoyed my niece's unfiltered joy. She sang every word to every song, jumped up and down until she was breathless, and declared it the best night of my entire life at least a dozen times. It wasn't until we were driving home, Lily, half asleep against my shoulder, that the bubble burst. "Auntie Kate?" she murmured sleepily. "Yes, sweetie." "Are you still mad at my mom and dad and grandma and grandpa?" I should have known Jennifer would put her up to this. It's complicated, honey. Sometimes grown-ups have disagreements that take time to work out. She sat up a little, suddenly more awake. "Mom said you're being mean and not helping us anymore because you're selfish." The words stung, but I kept my expression neutral. "Is that what she said?" Lily nodded. "She said you have lots and lots of money but you don't want to share anymore. And that's why I might have to change schools." The manipulation was breathtaking in its cruelty, using a child to make me feel guilty, threatening her stability to pressure me into compliance. In that moment, something hardened inside me. Not against Lily, never against her, but against the adults who would use her as a pawn in their games. "Lily, listen to me," I said gently. "Your mom and dad love you very much, and they'll make sure you have everything you need, including a good school. If they tell you that you need to change schools, that's a decision they're making as your parents. It's not because of me. But Mom said," I know what your mom said. "But sometimes adults say things that aren't completely true when they're upset or scared." She considered this, her young face serious in the dim light of the car. "Are you upset and scared too, Auntie Kate?" The question, so innocent and perceptive, caught me off guard. I admitted. "But I'm feeling better now. I'm figuring things out. Will you still be my aunt? Even if you're mad at everyone else?" "Oh, Lily," I hugged her close. "I will always, always be your aunt. Nothing will ever change that. I promise." She relaxed against me, satisfied with my answer. "Good. Because you give the best presents and take me to the best places." I laughed, though the comment hit uncomfortably close to the dynamic I was trying to break. Was I just Lily's ATM too, in her young mind? "I hope I'm more than just good presents," I said lightly. "I hope you know how much I love you." "I know," she said simply, with the unshakable confidence of childhood. "You're my favorite aunt. I'm your only aunt. Silly. Still my favorite," she mumbled, drifting back toward sleep. When we pulled up to Michael and Jennifer's house, I gently woke Lily and walked her to the door. Jennifer was waiting, her expression calculating as she took in her daughter's happy, exhausted face. "Did you have fun, sweetheart?" she asked, smoothing Lily's hair. "It was amazing," Lily gushed, suddenly wide awake again. "Taylor looked right at me, Mom." I swear she did wonderful. Why don't you go get ready for bed? I need to talk to Auntie Kate for a minute. Lily hugged me tightly, thanked me again, and disappeared into the house, still chattering about the concert. Jennifer crossed her arms, all pretense of warmth vanishing with Lily's absence. So, have you reconsidered your position on Lily's school? The next payment is due in 2 weeks. No, I haven't, I said. And I won't. She loves that school, Kate. All her friends are there. Her teachers adore her, I'm sure they do. And if it's that important to you and Michael, I'm sure you'll find a way to make it work. I turned to leave, then paused. Oh, and Jennifer? Don't ever use Lily to manipulate me again. She told me what you said. Jennifer had the grace to flush slightly, but quickly recovered. I only told her the truth. You're punishing her for adult problems. No, Jennifer. I'm holding you and Michael accountable for your own choices. It's a difference. I started down the steps, then turned back one last time. By the way, my lawyer will be contacting you both about repayment options for the fraudulent charges. I suggest you start setting aside some money. Her face paled. You wouldn't. I already have, I replied calmly. Good night, Jennifer. As my car pulled away, I felt a strange mixture of sadness and liberation. The relationship with my family was broken, perhaps beyond repair. But for the first time in years, I was standing up for myself, setting boundaries, and refusing to be used. It wasn't going to be easy. There would be more confrontations, more manipulation attempts, more guilt trips. My parents hadn't even entered the fray yet, though I was sure they would soon enough. They're saying what? I stared at my lawyer Miranda in disbelief. We were sitting in her sleek downtown office, reviewing the latest developments in what she had taken to calling the family situation. It had been 3 weeks since the concert with Lily. 3 weeks of blessed silence from my family after I'd made it clear I was serious about pursuing the fraudulent charges. Or so I thought. They're claiming you gave them explicit permission to use the card however they wanted, Miranda repeated, her tone professionally neutral despite the absurdity of the claim. Your mother specifically states that you told her, and I quote, "This card is for whatever you need." Mom, you've done so much for me, it's the least I can do. I let out a hollow laugh. That's a creative interpretation of this is for emergencies only. They're also claiming that many of the charges were gifts you agreed to, like the beach house rental for your cousin's engagement party. The engagement party I wasn't invited to? That I didn't even know about until after the fact. I shook my head in disbelief. This is unbelievable. Unfortunately, it's fairly typical behavior when family financial disputes escalate to this level. Miranda adjusted her glasses. People rewrite history to justify their actions, especially when significant sums are involved. The forensic accountant had completed his analysis the previous week. Over the past 3 years, my family had charged more than $175,000 to my emergency card for vacations I hadn't attended, gifts I hadn't approved, renovations I hadn't authorized, and countless meals, shopping sprees, and luxury experiences I'd known nothing about. What's our next step? I asked. Well, we have several options. Miranda laid out a folder containing documents. We can continue pursuing criminal charges for credit card fraud, which would likely result in your parents facing serious legal consequences. We can file a civil suit to recover the funds. Or, we can attempt to negotiate a settlement that includes a repayment plan. I stared out the window at the Chicago skyline, thinking, did I want to see my parents in legal trouble? Despite everything, the thought made my stomach clench. They were still my parents, even if they had betrayed my trust in the most fundamental way. Let's try negotiation first, I decided. Draw up a reasonable repayment plan. But make it clear that if they refuse, we're prepared to pursue all legal options. Miranda nodded, making notes. And what about the ongoing situation with your niece's school tuition and your brother's mortgage? Those stop permanently. They're adults. They can figure out their own finances. Understood. I'll schedule a mediation session and send the formal notices. She hesitated, then added, You should be prepared for this to get uglier before it gets better, Kate. When people have become accustomed to financial support and it's suddenly withdrawn, they rarely respond well even when they're clearly in the wrong. I sighed, suddenly tired. I know, but I can't keep enabling them. I can't keep being used. As I left Miranda's office, my phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. I almost ignored it, assuming it was another family member trying to get around my blocks, but something made me check. It was from Chris. New number. Can we talk? It's important. I called him immediately. Kate, thank God, he answered on the first ring. I've been trying to reach you for days. Sorry, I blocked all the family numbers. What's going on? It's bad, Kate, really bad. His voice was strained. Your parents are telling everyone that you're having some kind of mental breakdown. That you've become paranoid and delusional, accusing them of stealing from you when they were just accepting your generosity. They're saying they're worried about your mental health. A cold weight settled in my stomach. What? They've been calling everyone, aunts, uncles, cousins, family friends, even my fiancé's parents, saying you need help, that they're concerned about you, that you've become unstable because of stress and overwork. That's ridiculous, I said, though my voice sounded thin even to my own ears. I have documentation, bank statements, credit card records. I know. I told them that. I said if Kate's claiming fraud, she must have evidence. But they just shook their heads all sadly and said, you've created a narrative in your mind that isn't real. He paused. Kate, they're convincing people. Your Aunt Susan called me yesterday asking if I knew a good psychiatrist in Chicago who could help you. I pulled over to the side of the road, suddenly unsure if I could drive safely. The betrayal kept evolving, transforming into something even more sinister than I had imagined. Not content with stealing my money, they were now trying to steal my credibility, my reputation, my very sanity. Why are they doing this? I whispered. I think they're scared, Chris said gently. Your lawyer contacted them, right? They know you have proof. This is their preemptive strike if they can convince everyone you're unstable. Maybe your claims won't be taken seriously. Or maybe they've convinced themselves, I said bitterly. Maybe in their minds they really were entitled to my money. Maybe they really did believe they had permission. Either way, you need to know what they're saying. And there's something else. What now? I couldn't imagine what other blow could be coming. Michael and Jennifer are telling people you're trying to buy Lily's affection with expensive gifts to turn her against them. They're saying they might need to restrict your access to her for her emotional well-being. The world seemed to tilt beneath me. Lily, the one innocent party in all of this, the one relationship I had been determined to preserve, was now being used as the ultimate weapon against me. They can't do that, I said, but my voice lacked conviction. They were her parents. Legally, they could control who she saw. I'm so sorry, Kate. I just thought you should know what you're up against. After I hung up with Chris, I sat in my car for a long time, staring at nothing. The calculated cruelty of my family's response left me breathless. They weren't just fighting back. They were scorching the earth, willing to destroy my reputation, my relationships, even my relationship with Lily, rather than admit wrongdoing. When I finally felt steady enough to drive, I headed not home, but to my office. I needed to work to lose myself in the clean, logical world of numbers and investments, where things made sense and followed predictable patterns. My assistant looked surprised to see me on a Saturday. Kate, I didn't expect you in today. Just catching up on some things, I said, forcing a smile. Any messages? Just one your cousin's fiancé called Melissa. She sounded upset, said it was important you call her back. My heart sank. Had Melissa been pulled into this mess now too? I retreated to my office and dialed her number, bracing myself for more accusations, more evidence of my family's campaign against me. Kate? Melissa sounded cautious when she answered. Thank you for calling me back. Of course, I said, keeping my tone neutral. My assistant said you called. Yes, I needed to talk to you. About what your parents are saying. Here it comes, I thought. Another person who believes I'm having a mental breakdown. Chris told me about the credit card, she said, surprising me. About how they used it without your permission for our engagement party, and then told us it was a gift from you. Yes, that's true. I'm so sorry, Kate. I had no idea. When we didn't hear from you after the party, I thought maybe you were upset with us for some reason. I never imagined they were lying to all of us. Relief washed over me. She believed me. Thank you, I said, my voice thick. That ... means a lot right now. They called my parents yesterday, she continued, saying you were unstable, that you'd fabricated this whole fraud story. But it didn't make sense. Why would you make up something like that? And why would they have used your card for our party if you weren't involved? They're scared, I said, echoing Chris's assessment. I have proof of what they did, and now they're trying to discredit me before I can use it. It's awful, Melissa said. And I wanted you to know that Chris and I don't believe them. We know you're not unstable or paranoid. We know they're lying. By the time we hung up, I was fighting back tears, not of sadness this time, but of gratitude. At least 2 people in the extended family weren't buying into the smear campaign. 2 people believed me. It wasn't much, but it was something. The next week brought the mediation session Miranda had arranged. I arrived at the neutral office space with a knot in my stomach, knowing I would be facing my family for the first time since the confrontation with Michael at my office. They were already there, my parents, Michael, and Jennifer, sitting together on one side of a long table, a united front. Their lawyer, a silver-haired man with an expensive suit and a practiced, sympathetic expression, sat beside them. "Catherine," my mother said, her voice dripping with concern as I entered. "You look tired, dear. Are you sleeping?" The implication was clear. More evidence of my supposed mental instability. "I'm fine, Mom," I said coolly, taking a seat beside Miranda. "Let's get started." The mediator, a no-nonsense woman named Dr. Chun, began by establishing the ground rules. No interrupting, no personal attacks, focus on resolution rather than blame. "Now, I understand we're here to discuss allegations of unauthorized use of Miss Reynolds' credit card by her family members," she said. "And to explore possible repayment arrangements. Before we get into that," my family's lawyer interjected smoothly, "I think it's important to establish the context of this situation. The Reynolds family is deeply concerned about Catherine's mental and emotional state. They believe these allegations stem from a misunderstanding exacerbated by stress and possible psychological issues. My client's mental state is not relevant to these proceedings," Miranda countered firmly. "The facts are clear. Over $175,000 in unauthorized charges over 3 years, documented with bank statements and credit card records." "Unauthorized?" My father scoffed. "Katie gave her mother that card years ago. Said it was for whatever we needed. For emergencies," I corrected quietly. "Which a $15,000 beach house rental is not." "That was a gift," my mother exclaimed. "For Chris and Melissa. You always said you wanted to do something special for their wedding?" "It wasn't a wedding, Mom. It was an engagement party." "One I wasn't invited to. You were busy." "You're always busy." She turned to Dr. Chun imploringly. "She works constantly. 60, 70 hours a week sometimes. It's not healthy. We've been worried about her for years. Can we please focus on the financial matters at hand?" Miranda interrupted. "The question is not whether Reynolds works too much. It's whether her family had permission to charge $175,000 to her credit card." "Of course we had permission," Michael said dismissively. "Kate's always been generous with her money. She knows we struggle sometimes, especially with Lily's school tuition and medical bills." "Medical bills?" I repeated, confused. "What medical bills?" A flicker of panic crossed Jennifer's face before she composed herself. "For Lily's allergies. The specialist appointments." "Lily doesn't have allergies," I said slowly. "She's never mentioned allergies. She ate ice cream with nuts on it at her birthday party." The room fell silent. Jennifer and Michael exchanged glances. They were ... "Suspected allergies," Jennifer amended hastily. "We wanted to be sure." "How much did these suspected allergy appointments cost?" Miranda asked, making notes. "That's not relevant," their lawyer cut in. "The point is that Catherine was aware of and approved these expenses." "I was not aware," I said firmly. "I did not approve them. And I'd like to see the medical records for these alleged appointments. This is exactly what we're talking about," my mother said, her voice rising. "This paranoia, these accusations. Katie, honey, you need help. We're your family. We love you. We would never steal from you." "Then how do you explain the charges for the engagement party Chris says I was never told about? How do you explain telling his fiancé's parents that I had offered to pay for the beach house when I knew nothing about it?" "You did know," my father insisted. "We discussed it on the phone." "When? What day? What time?" "Because I've reviewed my phone records, and there are no calls from any of you around that time period except for Michael asking for Lily's tuition money." Another silence fell over the room. My family seemed to realize that their vague claims of verbal agreements weren't going to hold up against my documentation. The real blow came 3 days after the mediation session, when I received a formal email from Michael and Jennifer's lawyer. The subject line was simple: regarding visitation with Lily Reynolds. The message was coldly professional, stating that in light of recent events and concerns about emotional manipulation, they were temporarily suspending my access to Lily. If I wished to see her, I would need to do so under supervision at a neutral location to be determined, and only after I had demonstrated a commitment to resolving family conflicts in a healthy manner, which, reading between the lines, meant dropping the lawsuit and resuming my role as the family ATM. I read the email 3 times, each reading bringing a fresh wave of pain and anger. They were really doing it using Lily as leverage, punishing both her and me to try to force my compliance. I forwarded the email to Miranda, asking if we had any legal recourse. Her response was sympathetic but not encouraging, as Lily's parents, Michael and Jennifer, had broad discretion to determine who she spent time with. While I could potentially seek visitation rights as an aunt, if I could prove that cutting me off was harmful to Lily's well-being, such cases were difficult to win and could take years to resolve. In other words, they had me over a barrel. If I wanted to maintain my relationship with Lily, I would need to either give in to their demands or find another way to reach a resolution. I sat at my desk for a long time after reading Miranda's response, weighing my options. I could drop the lawsuit, forgive the debt, try to rebuild relationships with my family, knowing they would never truly respect me or see me as anything more than a convenient source of funds. I could continue the legal battle and risk losing Lily entirely during her formative years. Or I could try to find a middle path, some compromise that would allow me to maintain my self-respect while preserving the one family relationship that truly mattered to me. As I considered what to do, I remembered something my grandmother had told me years ago, when I was dealing with a particularly difficult client who seemed determined to take advantage of my good nature. Sometimes, she'd said, the strongest move isn't fighting back or giving in. It's changing the game entirely, changing the game. The phrase stuck with me as I left the office and headed home, turning over possibilities in my mind. My family expected either capitulation or continued legal battle. What if I did neither? What if I found a way to shift the dynamic so completely that their leverage no longer worked? By the time I reached my apartment, a plan was forming. Not a perfect plan, perhaps, but one that might just change the game enough to create a path forward. I spent the evening making calls, researching options, and drafting emails. When I finally went to bed in the early hours of the morning, I felt, for the first time in weeks, a glimmer of hope. The next day, instead of calling Miranda, I called a different lawyer, one who specialized not in civil litigation but in estate planning and charitable foundations. Then I called my financial advisor, my accountant, and finally, a realtor. If my family wanted to make this about money, I would show them exactly what money could and couldn't buy. And in the process, perhaps I would discover what truly mattered to them and to me. The envelope arrived at Michael and Jennifer's house on a Tuesday, exactly 2 weeks after they had restricted my access to Lily. It was hand-delivered by courier, marked personal and confidential, and addressed to both of them. Inside was a letter printed on my personal stationery, along with several legal documents and a certified check. The letter explained my terms: an irrevocable educational trust for Lily's school tuition, paid directly to the institution through graduation. The trust was non-negotiable; it would exist regardless of our personal conflicts. I also included a proposed visitation schedule that would allow me to maintain a relationship with my niece through monthly outings in public places of their choosing. My lawsuit regarding the fraudulent charges would continue separately. I was giving them a choice. They could continue using Lily as leverage, knowing it wouldn't change the legal proceedings but would harm her by removing me from her life. Or they could separate these issues, allowing Lily to maintain both her education and her relationship with me while we addressed our financial disputes through proper channels. 3 days later, I received a text from Jennifer. We can discuss the visitation schedule. Saturday, 10 a.m., the coffee shop on Maple Street. It wasn't an apology or an acknowledgement of wrongdoing, but it was an opening, a small crack in the wall they had built between me and Lily. 6 months passed. The educational trust was established, ensuring Lily's schooling regardless of our family drama. My monthly visits with her became the highlight of my calendar, carefully neutral outings to museums, parks, and child-friendly restaurants, where we could rebuild our relationship away from the tension between the adults in her life. The civil lawsuit proceeded slowly through the courts, with delays and procedural maneuvers from my family's legal team. I remained firm but patient, knowing the evidence was on my side. Meanwhile, I executed the rest of my plan. First, I sold my downtown condo and purchased a smaller place in a different neighborhood, still elegant and comfortable, but less flashy, less of a symbol of the wealth that had become such a source of contention. Second, I restructured my investments, creating a dedicated charitable foundation focused on financial literacy for young women, turning some of my money towards helping others avoid the kind of financial exploitation I had experienced. Third, I took a long overdue sabbatical from work, spending 2 months traveling through countries I'd always wanted to visit, but had been too busy to explore. When I returned, tanned and more centered than I'd felt in years, I was surprised to receive an invitation to Thanksgiving dinner, not from my parents or brother, but from Chris and Melissa. "Small gathering," Chris explained when I called. "Just us, a few friends, and, if you're willing, ... Your parents? My parents?" I hadn't spoken to them outside of legal contexts since the mediation session. "They asked if they could come," Chris said carefully. "I think they want to talk, but it's completely up to you. If you're not comfortable, we can have a separate dinner with just you." I considered declining. The lawsuit was still ongoing, the wounds still fresh. But something in me was curious, not hopeful exactly, but open to the possibility that time and distance might have created space for change. "I'll come," I decided. "But I reserve the right to leave if things get unpleasant." "Of course," Chris promised. "Neutral territory, neutral referee. I won't let it turn into an ambush." When Thanksgiving arrived, I dressed carefully, professional but not ostentatious. A visual statement that I was no longer playing the role of wealthy benefactor. I brought a modest bottle of wine and a homemade pie, resisting the urge to overcompensate with expensive gifts. My parents arrived shortly after I did, looking older and more subdued than I remembered. My mother's usual designer outfit was replaced by a simple sweater and slacks. My father lacked the confident swagger I'd grown up with. "Catherine," my mother said, using my full name like she always did in formal situations. "You look well." "Thanks, Mom. You too." The initial conversation was painfully polite, carefully avoiding any mention of the ongoing legal issues or the broader family conflict. We discussed the weather, Chris and Melissa's wedding plans, safe topics that wouldn't disturb the fragile peace. It wasn't until after dinner, when Chris and Melissa tactfully left us alone in the living room to check on dessert, that my father cleared his throat and spoke directly. "Katie, we've been doing a lot of thinking, and ... Well, we owe you an apology." I nearly dropped my wine glass. In 32 years, I had never heard my father apologize for anything. "We got carried away," my mother added, her voice unusually small. "It started with small things, emergencies like you said, but then it just ... It became easy, too easy. And when you called us on it," my father continued, "we panicked. Instead of owning up to it, we tried to discredit you. That was ... That was unforgivable." I sat in stunned silence, absorbing their words. "Why are you telling me this now?" "Because we miss you," my mother said simply. "And because we've realized what we've lost is worth far more than any amount of money." "The lawsuit," I began, but my father held up a hand. "We're not asking you to drop it. We've told our lawyers to stop fighting and work out a reasonable payment plan. We can't repay everything immediately, but we're committed to making it right." I studied their faces, searching for signs of manipulation or deception. I found none, just regret, and perhaps a glimmer of hope. "What changed?" I asked. "We did," my mother said. "When Michael and Jennifer started using Lily to pressure you, it ... It made us see ourselves differently. Made us see what we'd become," my father nodded. "We've started therapy, if you can believe it. Old dogs, new tricks and all that. And Michael?" My parents exchanged glances. "Michael and Jennifer are struggling," my mother admitted. "They're still angry, still feel entitled to your support. We've tried to talk to them, but they're not ready to hear it yet." I nodded, unsurprised. Of all my family members, Michael and Jennifer had been the most dependent on my financial support, the most resistant to accountability. "I don't expect us to go back to how things were before," I said carefully. "That relationship wasn't healthy for any of us." "We know," my father said. "We're not asking for money or support. Just ... A chance to rebuild something different, something better. I took a deep breath, considering their offer. The cynical part of me wondered if this was just another manipulation, another strategy to eventually regain access to my resources. But the wiser part recognized genuine remorse when I saw it. I'm willing to try, I said finally. Slowly, with boundaries, and with the understanding that trust takes time to rebuild. The relief on their faces was palpable. Not the greedy relief of someone who has succeeded in a con, but the genuine relief of people who had feared permanent estrangement and found an unexpected path back. As Chris and Melissa returned with dessert, I felt a weight lifting, not completely, but enough to notice the difference. The road ahead would be long and likely bumpy, but at least there was a road. 1 year to the day after Lily's fateful birthday party revelation, I sat in a downtown cafe, waiting. The bell over the door jingled and Michael walked in, alone and looking uncomfortable in its business casual attire. He spotted me and hesitated before approaching. "Thanks for meeting me," he said stiffly as he sat down. "Your message sounded important," I replied, keeping my tone neutral. He fidgeted with a napkin, avoiding my eyes. "I've been thinking about things. About what happened, about how I handled it." I waited, not offering him the easy out of my immediate forgiveness. "I was wrong," he finally said. "About all of it. The money, the lies, using Lily as leverage. I was ... I was entitled and selfish." "Yes, you were," I agreed calmly. He flinched slightly but nodded. "I'm not asking for your forgiveness or for things to go back to how they were. I just wanted you to know that I understand what I did, and I'm sorry. I studied my brother, this man who had been both my childhood defender and my adult exploiter." "What changed, Michael?" "Jennifer left," he said quietly. 3 months ago. Said she was tired of living beyond our means, tired of the constant stress about money. She took Lily to stay with her parents in Michigan. "I'm sorry to hear that," I said, and meant it. It made me look at things differently. At how I'd been living, at the example I was setting for my daughter. He met my eyes directly for the first time. "At how I'd treated you." The settlement for my lawsuit had been finalized 2 months earlier. My parents had agreed to a payment plan they could reasonably manage. Michael and Jennifer had initially refused to participate, but their portion of the debt remained. "I can't repay you right away," Michael continued, "but I've taken a second job, and I'm committed to paying back every cent. No more excuses, no more entitlement." I nodded, appreciating the gesture but still cautious. "And Lily?" "Jennifer's agreed to continue the visitation schedule. She ... She actually said Lily talks about you all the time. Says you're the one adult in her life who's never let her down." His voice cracked slightly. That was hard to hear, but it was true. We talked for another hour about his plans to downsize, to rebuild his relationship with Lily, to create a more honest life. For the first time since we were kids, I felt like I was talking to my actual brother, not the entitled persona he'd adopted as an adult. As we parted ways, he hesitated. "Kate, I know I have no right to ask anything of you, but ... Would you be willing to talk to Lily more often? She misses you." "I miss her too," I said. "And yes, I'd like that very much." Walking away, I felt a sense of closure that had eluded me for the past year. The family dynamic that had turned me into nothing but an ATM was broken beyond repair, and that was a good thing. From its ruins, something healthier might eventually grow. I would never again be the family ATM. But I might, with time and careful boundaries, be something far more valuable. A sister, a daughter, an aunt who was loved for who she was, not for what she could provide. And that, I realized, was worth more than all the money in the world.